we'll get started, and as people come in, you can tell them to grab journals and pens and incorporate them into our sushi and journaling extravaganza. So good evening. My name is Dr. Mia Ozer, and this is Liat over here, and she helped to organize everything with Shuva. Thank you so much. So I want to thank Rabbi and Rebbetzin Lanyado and Liat and Shuva for hosting this 4-part series. And I recognize a lot of faces, so I think I've seen most of you before in one place or the other, shiurim. So this shiur is going to be a little bit different. First, in that it's a 4-part series. So I've designed this 4-part series that each one is building on the other. So if you are planning to come for all of them, you'll kind of get the full experience of what I'm designing. If people are not here tonight and they want to come to the next one, they won't feel lost. I'll do a very quick review at the beginning of each one to kind of catch people up on what we covered, and we'll go from there. So but you guys are in a peak position because you're at the start of the 4-part series. So if you make it at all the parts, or if you get a recording of one of them or whatever, you'll get the full experience. B'ezrat Hashem, we should have Sata Dishmaya, that it should all come out making sense. I know where I want to go, and I just hope Hashem will help me get there. So we'll see how it's going to fly. The series is called 10 Mistakes Jewish Women Make and How to Fix Them. So I could have named this any number of things, okay? What I really wanted to name it was the 10 ways in which the Satan tries to trip us up and how to prevent him from doing that. But if I named it that, this never would have happened, because if I put that out there into the universe that I'm trying to defeat our greatest challenger, he would put every roadblock in front of my way in order to make sure that it didn't happen. So now the cat's out of the bag, and we'll see what happens from this point forward. But we'll stick with the mindset of kind of running through over the course of the four periods together, 10 things that I've observed in my experience professionally and in my experience personally that I feel that we as Jewish women sometimes make, and how I've kind of assessed how we can overcome it. By educating ourselves, or tools and tips, tricks of the trade, and that kind of thing. So the course is going to be a little bit different than what I normally do. It's going to be kind of this weave together of hashkafa, and a bit of musar, and a bit of sledgehammer, and a bit of love and hugs, and a bit of tears, and a bit of laughing, and it'll be kind of one big smush ball of stuff, okay? But don't take anything I say personally, and if you do take it personally, it's a sign you should be taking it personally. When you feel that discomfort or that offense or that kind of like grind of like, I don't like her, I don't like what she's saying, I don't like what she's telling us, that's a really good sign that you're in the right place at the right time, hearing what you need to hear. Okay, so in general, that's kind of how it works, is the things that make us uncomfortable and the things that we don't want to hear are usually the things we need to hear most, right? Hi, how are you? Feel free to take a journal and a pen. Come on in. So I'm going to plan for this class to kind of be we're going to go fast and deep in this class, because there's so much content that I've put together that I'm worried we're not going to get through it. And that's okay. We'll cover whatever it is Hashem has decided for us that we're going to cover. But if you feel a little bit like your circuits are being blown up, or you're feeling a little kind of cognitive dissonance, or you're feeling a little bit like off balance, it's okay. Trust the process, and trust that you'll have time after to process and sort and think and reflect and take notes, take your journal, write thoughts that are coming to you. Don't necessarily censor yourself. Write questions that are coming to you, and you can always reach out to me by email, phone, whatever, and shoot me a text message and say, I thought about this, what do you think about that? And I'm to the extent that I can, I'm happy to support and help you through. So Mazel Tov, because tonight begins your preparation for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. You didn't know that, but that's what's happening. Okay? And you might say to yourself, how is that even possible? And it's so possible because we're going to blink, and the next thing we know, we're going to be putting on our clothes for Rosh Hashanah and fighting for our seats. I'm counting on you, Danielle. She helps hook me up with a good seat in the shul. And we're going to be sitting in the seat, God willing, that it was inscribed last year that we make it to this coming Rosh Hashanah. God willing that we will be sitting there again, reflecting, begging for forgiveness, deciding what we need to do differently, and setting goals and paths for ourselves. So we're not going to wait until Elul. Last year I did an Elul tour of like all over the community of like chizuk and stuff. I don't know that I have the koach for that this year, so I'm starting now. So I'm pacing myself so I don't have to squeeze it all into Elul. So you guys are getting the first out of the gate. But that's really how I want you to view what we're going to be covering over the 4-part series. Is I really want you to view it as this is preparing myself for now and for next year and for the rest of my life. Like I want you to unpack the things that I'm offering to you in such a way that you're going to put it back together in pieces to help build a stronger foundation for yourself as a Jewish woman living in this absolutely insane and crazy world that we live in right now. So that's kind of the foundation. I want to dedicate this entire series to Leilui Nishmas, my father-in-law, Alfred Ben Nisim and Regina. I also have a very unfortunate situation that took place in the last 24 hours in my family. A young boy, he's 20. I've known him since he was born. He is the son of my sister's very, very, very dear friend. He was unfortunately at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. He was on a scooter and hit by a car and is nifter. And his funeral is tomorrow. And so I also want to, I share that for 2 reasons. First, I want to make the shiur, the whole shiur, the series, and pretty much everything I do from this point forward, Leilui Nishmas, Seth Ben Jody, and to demonstrate that we just don't know how much time we have. And we just don't know Hashem's ways, and we don't know Cheshbonot Shemayim. And for as painful as it is, and I'm sure everyone in this room has experienced a loss, as painful as it is, it's also it's for us to take to heart and to know that every minute that we're gifted is that. It's just that. It's a gift. And that we have to take advantage of it. And that when we have opportunities for learning, when we have opportunities for growing, we can't put them off. We have to know that we have to make use of what Hashem is giving us now, today. So we don't take for granted that we're going to be here or that those around us are going to, we're going to pray that we're going to be here. We're going to pray that those around us are going to be here. But we have to do it with such a knowledge to know that the clock is always ticking, and we hope it's ticking towards Mashiach, and that he's coming, and that we're going to be on the right side of history when that happens. And we hope that we move forward in a healthy and way, and we just send love and chizuk to those who are going through really, really difficult and challenging times. So on that note, I welcome you to participate in the conversation. I'm going to bring a lot of sources that I'm going to read from because they say it better than me. And I'm going to try to put it all together in a way that makes sense. I hope it does. If I'm just completely losing you in any way, shape, or form, raise your hand and tell me. And I'll do my best to get myself on a track that makes the best sense. Hi, welcome. So now that I've kind of given you an overview of the class, and in particular I want to highlight the fact that we are in the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av, right? So we all know that this is a very sensitive time of the year. We know we have to be a little bit more what I call still. We need to be still. We need to be a bit more quiet, a bit more attentive, a bit more cautious, and a bit more aware of the fact that there's an energy in the world right now that can be very challenging, and so we want to work with it and not against it, and just kind of prepare ourselves as we move through these 3 weeks and move into Tisha B'Av. And last year I remember thinking to myself that I was so certain it was going to be the very last Tisha B'Av, and it might still be the very last Tisha B'Av. It's not too late for that, and I'm still holding out hope that that's the case. But in the event that that's not the case, then what we want to do is we really want to tune ourselves in to exactly what that means. And what does it mean for us right now as women who have come from every other part of our lives here tonight to learn, to say how do we strengthen ourselves and connect ourselves kind of universally to each other, to Hashem, to be able to build and give strength not just to Am Yisrael but also to the Shekhinah. And one of the things I want to really mention about this class and in general, and it's kind of tool number one for everything we're going to cover in 4 weeks, is to know that the Shekhinah is real. She is real. She is Hashem's presence in this world, and she is, unfortunately, as we all are, in Galus, and she mourns every second of every day that she doesn't have her own home. And so what is the only home that can be provided for her? It's what we create for her here on earth. It's what the Jewish woman creates for her on earth. We are the one who opens the doors and the gateway for the Shekhinah to come down into this world, into this olam, and to come into our homes, into our hearts, into our families, into our Beit Knesset. And we do that by kind of fixing some of the mistakes that we've been doing and that we may be making, right? And improving ourselves and building ourselves in such a way that we create a life around us that we welcome the Shekhinah, we welcome Hashem's presence and holiness into our life. Does that make sense? So this is particularly timely now because these times leading up to Tisha B'Av, which is the day that has the least presence of the Shekhinah, right? It's that the other side is in full gear on that day throughout history. And so everything that we do to build ourselves and welcome the Shekhinah in and improve and open ourselves to having the holiness and the Kedusha of the Shekhinah in our lives creates her presence here and gives less power to the other side. Does that make sense? Okay. So, the first quote-unquote mistake that I came up with that we as Jewish women tend to make is that we don't know who we are. We don't know who we are. Now you might say, but I do know who I am. I know my name, I know my spouse, I know my kids, I know where I live, I know who I am. But I'm not talking about it in that sense of the way. I'm talking about it in the universal, global, Breshis, bara, Elokim, et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. I'm talking about who we are as a creation of Hashem. Do you see the difference in the question? The difference between, I know my name is Mia and I have kids and my husband is Shaul and versus I am a creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In my own way, I am limitless and I am actually a walking representation of Him on this planet. Right? Different way of viewing. One is much more internal, kind of your own personal, representation here, and the other is, boom, I am connected to something so huge. And that makes me huge in my very nature and essence, okay? So I want to begin by talking about who are we? How do we really grasp who are we? And these kind of questions are laying the foundation for everything we're going to cover moving forward in the 4 weeks, okay? So the Ramchal, Rabbeinu Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, in Derech Hashem, says, we are lehetiv mitovo. We are Hashem, the good of everything Hashem has to give to us, okay? Hashem created us so that He can do good with His own goodness. So we ask ourselves, well, what does that even mean? How do we understand? We understand from the sages that Hashem is all good, and everything He created is all good. And so therefore, if He created us, we are, by our very essence, good, because He only creates goodness. So, and we're only created from an absolute shleimus, an absolute completeness. So we are coming from wholeness and we are coming from goodness. Now there's a lot that happens to us throughout our lives, and when you take into consideration that we have a big challenger in our life, he has a name, he has a role, he is an angel, and he does his job exceptionally well. Okay, God bless you. But overall, barring that, we are goodness, we come from goodness, and we come from completion, completeness. So even if we have an intellectual challenge with trying to understand ourselves, trying to understand the challenges that we face on a fundamental level, we are and have everything that we need because Hashem created us from Him, for Him, in order to give fully, completely from His goodness. So it's hard to remember those kinds of things on a day in, day out because we're dealing with the daily grind, right? But this is what the Ramchal brings. Now I want to go into this book by Aryeh Kaplan called Inner Space. I don't know if any of you have ever read it. It's really dealing much more with the esoteric creation of the world. But I'm going to pull from very specific stuff. So in here he's talking about the purpose of creation. That we are the ultimate recipient of everything Hashem wanted to create. Now, Hashem doesn't need us. He didn't need to create us. But they give an analogy. He gives an analogy in the book. He says, imagine there is a king, and he has an exceptionally beautiful palace. And he decorates the entire palace, and he makes it the most unbelievable place you can imagine, with food and drink and everything you can think of, and there are no guests. What fun is that for him? He's created this perfectly meticulous, beautiful place, and nobody to share it with. And so Aryeh Kaplan, Rav Aryeh Kaplan, uses this example to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't need us. He doesn't need us. But He wanted to share His creation. He wanted to share in all that is good that He created. And so we are, in that analogy, Hashem's guest. We are that being that He created at the end of the 6 days so that He could share all the beauty and bounty that He created. So that, by the way, that parable is coming out of the Talmud. That's not just like some fairy tale that somebody made up. That's straight out of the Talmud. Okay, so this is why Hashem brought man into the world, and He's talking about who we are. So how did He create us? So we understand that Hashem created us. You guys know, right? He breathed essentially Himself into us. So when you think about that, we're talking about being the essence of the very Creator that created us. That spark, that neshama that we have that animates us, is literally a part of the essence of the Creator Himself. So it shows you that at our very, very core, we have this almost unimaginable goodness. We have this unimaginable liveliness, spark that animates us, that gives us life, that keeps us in life, even when we're doing things against our own Creator. He continues to give us life, right? It's such an unbelievable thing to think about the Rachamim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that His very creators do things against Him, and He still continues to let them breathe and walk and talk and use their hands and use their legs, etc., etc. If we could only have as much Rachamim as HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, right? His Rachamim is endless. Endless in giving, okay? So we say here that if we are a part of His essence by the very way that we are created, it says here we find a hint of an answer in the Talmud. It says, the Torah states, you shall follow the Lord your God, fear Him, and keep His commandments, obey Him, and serve Him, and bind yourself to Him. The Talmud asks, how can one bind himself to God? God is not a physical creation. We don't have the ability to physically connect with God. Okay? It says, the Talmud answers, we bind ourselves to God by imitating His attributes. And if His attributes are all good and all giving, then we know that we have that capacity within us to become like God, to emulate Him in His nature of giving and in His nature of goodness. So everywhere where we feel that we are bumping up against limitation, this is our own stuff that we are bumping up against. These are our own challenges, our own mental blocks, our own emotional blocks. It's our stuff, because at the very core, the very essence of who we are in a way limitless. We are in a way an image of Hashem. And so whenever we begin to have those kinds of second thoughts and challenges about our capabilities, we have to come back to that fundamental understanding of who we are. We are the direct creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even more so, and we'll get into that a little bit later, the idea of being a Jewish soul in this world is something even more unique and special. As a descendant of Avraham Avinu, which there's a whole thing that we'll get into about the idea of Avraham and how Avraham found the Kadosh Baruch Hu and how he separated himself from the nation and how we come down from that. So we come from greatness. We come from absolute greatness. Do you have a question?
Why is it only women?
Say again?
It's not only women that make that mistake.
No, it's definitely not only women. But the uniqueness about women is that we come into this world not necessarily needing a tikkun, meaning we have no chiyuv to get married. Right? We have no obligation to marry. Right? Men come into this world, Jewish men especially, come into this world with a chiyuv to get married, and the mitzvah of pru'avu is theirs. Right? We come in already on a spiritually higher level. That's in several of the texts. Women come in, their neshama, on a higher spiritual level, but we come in as their kenegdo. We come in as a helper to man, right? A woman can make her tikkun or accomplish things in this world without needing another being. Men cannot. So when we as a woman, and especially as a woman who is married or desires to get married, wants to make that, have that partnership and that relationship, wants to have that Dveikus Hashem, when we start questioning our own abilities and our own value, we have to know that we're not only impacting ourselves, we're impacting our partners, we're impacting our children, we're impacting our parents, we're impacting all over the place. Because the power of a woman, in particular a Jewish woman, and the neshama that we mashpia, we leave an imprint on where we are and where we go, for better or for worse, which is another thing that we have to reflect upon. So, so we are emulating Hashem in order to become closer to Hashem, and we understanding who we are is as a part, literally a part of the creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to share goodness and to emulate Him. So we're on this planet to do those things. We're on this planet as literally a representation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and especially as the daughters of Avram Avinu. Then we're on this planet as a Goy Kadosh, as part of a holy nation. So we are royalty. We're royalty. Do you ever think about yourself as royalty? Do you ever lay in bed at night after you do Shema and think, I'm royalty? Probably not. Most of us don't think like that. But maybe we should. Maybe that's part of the mistakes that we're making. Is that in this day and age, in this time in history, and in this time of the year, and as we're leading up to the days of Mashiach, maybe the more of us who really come to grasp and understand who we are, the greater the chances are going to be that we're going to bring Mashiach faster. Because when we tap into our greatness and we start to have that fuse within us and then fuse outward into the world around us with our partners and our children and where we work and in our communities, so we start to radiate and emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because that's essentially what Hashem is doing constantly. That's all He's doing, is radiating goodness to us. Even when we think it doesn't look right or doesn't feel right or it's not what we want, He knows it's what's best for us. And He's always doing what's best for us, even though we can't understand it most of the time. You know, especially when it doesn't feel good. But I'm sure many of us have had the experience where something at first seems like it's a bad event, and then weeks later we're like, oh my God, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank God I didn't do that. Thank God I didn't buy that. Thank God I didn't go there. Thank God I didn't date that one. We have all of those kinds of, epiphanies after the fact. But Hashem already knew. He already knew what's best for us. Okay, so understanding who we are requires that we have a certain kind of unity with HaKadosh Baruch Hu by working to emulate Him, to kind of copy Him, to be like Him and His attributes, and to begin to understand our true selves and our true essence. And so when we're in a moment of behavior, let's say is not bekavadik of the Jewish royalty that we are, it's in those moments we have to catch ourselves to say, wait a minute, is this how a Jewish royal woman should act or speak or be, right? This is completely an individual process for the self. It is not our job to tell other people how they're doing it and if they're doing it right or wrong. That's not the way to do it. It's not our job to come and to be the police people of everyone around us in our perfection, right? But it is our job to do it for ourselves. It is our job to say, hey, wait a minute. As being a creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and being someone who has His essence and being someone who is a royal daughter of Hashem, there's a certain expectation of my behavior. There's a certain expectation of my personal self-work that I need to do to bring out the best in myself, for myself and everyone around me. Okay? Now, what's so fascinating, when I was reading, I'm going to read it from here, okay? For earning his own perfection and closeness to the divine, the maximum possible challenge is required. So, what is the maximum possible challenge? I kind of tapped around it a little bit earlier. What exists in this world as a maximum possible challenge? And each of us has our own unique curriculum. The Yetzer Hara, okay? The angel that is the master of challenge, okay? So in order for us to bring out the best in ourselves, Hashem had to create a system in which we are challenged. We had to earn it. We had to figure out for ourselves who we are. Because when you do the hard work to figure out who you are and to unleash and unlock and uncover the essence of who you are, then you can own it. Because you've done that personal work. No one's just handed it to you. You've had to break yourself and bend yourself and examine yourself and really go deep to say, how do I emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Where am I not emulating Him? Where do I need to change and grow? So in order for Him to do this, He had to create a grand challenger. This in turn results in the greatest possible pleasure of accomplishment. Because you know that when you work hard for something, and you earn it, that is a much greater sense of accomplishment than if someone just hands it to you, correct? Right? So this is a part of the system. So such an environment must be, therefore, one in which neither God Himself nor the divine nature of our deeds can be obvious. That means all this goodness that I'm talking about, all this giving and all this goodness that I'm referring to, has to be nistar, it has to be hidden by its very nature. Because it's up to us to find it. Not just to find it in the world, but to find it in ourselves. And so who are we? We are these unbelievable creations of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that are sent into this world to basically find ourselves, to discover ourselves, to discover our connection and closeness with HaKadosh Baruch Hu by using the tool He's given us to emulate His goodness and His greatness. Okay? The place where man receives good, it must be a world where God is hidden, where good can only be accomplished with great difficulty. We have to work to uncover and discover. The place where man receives good, on the other hand, must be the exact opposite, should be obvious. Meaning, when we get pleasure from something, fantastic, we've gotten it. We got it. In order for man to enjoy the maximum possible pleasure, the true nature of his deeds should be as obvious as possible. So what did Hashem do in order for us to be in a world in which we experience pleasure, but also be in a world in which we have to dig and work hard to find the goodness? There's a difference between goodness and pleasure. Not everything pleasurable is good for us. Would you agree? So how is Hashem going to do it? He had to create a way in which we experience pleasure, so we desire pleasure, but that we have an even greater desire for the search for goodness, both in the world, to find Him, and in ourselves. So what did He do? He created two levels of existence. Olam hazeh, where the pleasure is obvious and rooted primarily in physical experience, and Olam haba, the world to come. The world where Hashem is revealed and where all of our goodness is purely revealed. All of the hard work that we do in this world is for us to earn the greatest level of pleasure that great Hashem can give us in the coming world. Does that make sense? So who are we? We're thrown into this world as a creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in order to essentially use everything we can about the physical world to discover ourselves, emulate Hashem, and earn everything we possibly can as a reward in the world to come. So that's very different than thinking you're born and you live and you die and there's nothing more or nothing less. Yes?
That was very deep. Can you repeat?
That was very, 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 very deep. Okay? So who are we? We are a creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're put into this world, into this physical world, to use everything we possibly can, our physical body, the physical world around us, to learn, dig, discover both ourselves, our essence, and Him, who is hidden in this world, so that we can do the hard work here and earn the greatest of all the pleasures and good He has to offer in Olam Haba. So by the very nature of who we are, we understand that this experience, this physical experience that we are having, is wholly and completely for the purpose of our earning Olam Haba. Like if I literally teach you nothing else, and you walk out of here today with that understanding, that in and of itself can be a life changer. Why? Because when you start to have the idea and the understanding really sit in with you and sink in with you, that your whole reason for being here is to discover Hashem so He can reward you with everything He has to offer in the next world, your entire paradigm of life changes. Everything you thought was important before may no longer be important. And your entire value system can flip on its head, depending on where you're holding. We think it's fantastic to get a new job, have a nice salary, get a new car, go on a vacation, eat a little good food. And it's written in the books that we can't even begin to comprehend what Hashem is waiting to give us in the next world if we do the work that we need to in this world to discover our own selves and discover Him in the process. So what the greatest tool that Hashem gives us, we won't get into this piece of it right now, but I'll just throw it out there, that the greatest tool that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us as Jewish nation is the Torah. And how to do it. Because the Torah is literally the manual for how to discover Him. The manual for how to come close to yourself. The manual to understand the greatness of who you are. And the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, as we're in these 3 weeks, and we reflect upon the coming of Tisha B'Av, and that day, the absence, chas v'shalom, of the Shekhinah in our world, and we begin to understand that we literally are the walking embodiment of who and what can bring the Shekhinah into this world at any given moment, you begin to see that you are a walking powerhouse. Yes?
Sorry, so, excuse me, so doing good, nice things can seem quite trivial, especially if you're inclined to hold the door for people, give charity, like all the typical things that are good, not to discount them. But are we saying that the working on our Yetzer Hara, or combating the things that we personally have to deal with, that's going to elevate us to that level rather than the more basic
100%. That's exactly what I'm saying. And actually, you're a few steps ahead of me, which is excellent. So just to recap what she just said, she's saying, so other than all the niceties of this world, holding the door for someone, saying please, saying thank you, doing acts of kindness and chesed, which is an integral part of the Torah, of living a Torah life, she's saying that if we do that personal work, you know, you're an angry person and you work on not being angry anymore, you break the midos that you have that are bad midos, can that bring you to a higher level of what we're discussing here? And not only is the answer yes, it's unequivocally yes. It's actually why we are here. It is literally why we are here. So that leads me perfectly, segue, thank you, to the next quote-unquote mistake that we make. And that is, we don't understand why we're here. So the first mistake is, we don't understand who we are. Do we have a little bit of a better idea now of who we are? No, seriously, I'm asking. Do you feel like you're taking in what I'm telling you about who you are? Because it takes time for these kinds of ideas. These are like deep-seated, heavy-hitting ideas. And it's very easy to kind of have it just go whoop right over your head. But maybe in 3 weeks from now, 3 months from now, 3 years from now, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's what she was talking about in that shiur. And that's fine. Whenever it falls in, it falls in. The important thing is that it's going into your ears. Your neshama hears it. I don't need you necessarily to understand it. Your neshama knows exactly what I'm talking about. What will happen is at some point when you're ready, your neshama will shake up a little bit, and then your intellect will pop up and it will all kind of start to integrate and fall together. And everybody at their own level. But what I am encouraging you and I'm telling you is the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking. Mashiach is coming. I'm not saying that like, oh, it's a nice idea. No, I mean, literally you will have ad kan until then. And whatever work you've put in and whatever you've accomplished at that point, I believe you'll have one final opportunity at the sound of the horn that Hashem is like, you're in 100% or you're out. You're coming with me or you're not. Like black and white. But better that we do the work now and we get ourselves to that space now than in the final moment having to jump to a side. Do you notice what Hashem is doing with the world now? Do you notice Hashem is making everyone pick a side? You're either with them or you're not. There's no in between anymore. Do you know that the conservative and reform movements are all but finished? They're falling apart bit by bit. You're either completely going on the secular path or you're going to become religious. There will be nothing in between. I'm being completely honest. You can see it. You can see it unfolding in front of you.
Are you suggesting that the people who are not observant Jewishly will be like not welcome to participate in?
Oh no, the opposite is what I'm saying. The opposite is what I'm saying. I'm saying there will come a moment, and it's written, it's in the prophecies. There will come a moment where it will become obvious to everyone. There will be a knowing and understanding, whether it's going to be the shofar or however it's going to happen. There are a few different accountings. You will know and understand you're being given a final chance to make a decision. You're in or out. That's it.
Okay, so if you're out, what does that mean?
I don't know. You can read the prophecies. They're very scary. They're super scary. There were 20% of all of the Israelites that made it out of Yetziat Mitzrayim. 80% were buried in the sand in Makat Choshech. Why did he bury them in the sand? Because he didn't want the Egyptians to think that they died like everybody else. It's written in the prophecies, the ratios will be exactly the same. 20% of all living Jews will make it at the time of Mashiach. No more. Unless people do tshuva.
So they won't be welcome to participate.
It's not welcome. Everyone is welcome. It's up to every single individual. It's a choice.
Saying what they want to do.
It's a free will. It's a free will.
Or go different directions.
It's a total choice. Hashem wants all of his children. What parent is going to say, I want you and I don't want you? Hashem wants everybody. He wants all. How many Jews are in the world? 15 million? Mm-hmm. Maybe? He wants 15 million. Is there 15 million in one? He wants them all. The prophecies say that's not what's going to happen. I hope those prophecies are wrong. I mean, who am I to, I don't know anything. All I know is what's been written. You know, and I'm just sharing over what's been written. But what's been written is terrifying. Honestly, if I didn't believe it with all my core and all my heart, I wouldn't take my time and come and lecture. I wouldn't take my time to come and say, please, let me share with you what I know. Let me share with you how. Let me share with you your options. And you'll make your decisions whenever you make them, whatever they are. It's so personal. It's literally between every single person and Hashem. Between the Creator and the creation. And everyone comes to it in whatever way that they do and in whatever time. But I want to be so clear. Don't take it the opposite of what I'm saying. I'm saying he wants everyone. Everyone is invited. Everyone is welcome. But there will come a time where he'll say, for thousands of years I'm telling you what's going to happen. I wrote it down. I told this prophet to tell you and this prophet and this prophet. And you had the books and you had them in front of you. And had Rebbeim telling you, had Mia telling you on July 10th, she told you. You know? So it's one of those things where it's like, how long can we go and remain in a stance of defiance? Listen, I went through, and I've told my story before, I had a life-threatening incident that took me, I was finished, done, dead. In the hospital, dead. Literally. I had lost 10 units of blood. I had no blood left in me. So I was brought to my finish and begged for another chance. So I had a little bit more of an extreme situation that put my back to the wall to say, okay, who am I? What am I about? What is this experience about? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you bring me back to my family, I'm going to serve you completely. Whatever that means, I don't know what that means, but I'll do it. And I had to discover, what does that mean? So the things that I'm talking about and teaching about and lecturing about are very different than the things I did 10 years ago, because I have a different understanding of life and expectations, the expectations that are on each one of us. So I can't reiterate enough how much Hashem loves us, is insane about us, every one of us, and wants us with him, you know? But he put forth in his creation his expectations and the Torah and way of life and how to do it. And frankly, the power of the Yetzer Hara, the power of the other side that is in the world, is so strong that it's also written by the sages that the only way to challenge it, defeat it, make headway, you know, elevate yourself like we're discussing, is through the tools that Hashem gives us in the Torah. Through the mitzvos, through understanding him, through understanding why we're here, who we are, which is why I chose to start tonight with those two primary pieces of the puzzle. Because if we don't understand who we are and we don't understand why we're here, then everything else is just kind of, it's just kind of information. But if I can't get across to you how tremendous you are, and I can't get across to you that you're literally a walking divine piece of greatness, then everything else I teach you is not going to have as great of an impact. Because I need for you to understand who you are and why you're here. And then all the rest of it is it's just gas in the engine to get you going faster in the direction in which it's going to accelerate you and raise you up. Does that make sense? So, speaking of choice, that's the one thing that Hashem had to put into the world in order for us to accomplish is free will. Without me diving into what is free will and all of that, can you piece together in your minds why we need to have free will? if Hashem had to hide himself from us so that we could work and earn to discover him and to discover the greatness within each of us, how could he possibly do it without free will? We have to have a choice, right? We have to be able to choose what we do, how we do it, how we live, how we behave. Otherwise, it's just forced. If there was absolutely no gap between cause and effect. So, I was listening to one Rav, he's talking about the idea of being Shomer Shabbos. He said, imagine what it would be if somebody lit up a cigarette on Shabbos and their head exploded right then. And then the next person, the second person, lit up a cigarette and their head just exploded right then. He's like, do you think literally anyone else ever would light up a cigarette on Shabbos? No, they would stand still like this and be like, okay, don't move, don't do anything, it's Shabbos, I don't want anything to happen. It's forced, right? There's no even space for making a choice. You're not earning anything, you're just doing it out of complete and total fear that you're going to explode. Right? Hashem wants us to be able to have that choice. Do we light the cigarette on Shabbos or we don't light the cigarette on Shabbos? That choice is your power. That's your koach. So as you begin to understand that every single choice has an impact, really for eternity, because Hashem, everything that happens in this world, Hashem is aware of everything, every thought, every feeling on every person on the planet. It's not something that's easy for us at all to understand. But he knows our hearts. So if he knows we have an intention to want to improve, but it's just taking us a little bit longer, we get points for that intention. He says, look at my daughter. She wants so badly to improve. Look how cute she is. Look, I love her. Come on, you can do it. And he's there rooting for us, like we would do for our own children. You understand? He sees what we desire and what we want. There's one mitzvah I've been wanting to do. I'm not kidding. I'm thinking about it for a year. And I still haven't been able to bring myself to do it on a regular basis. I'm trying. And I even say that out loud. Hashem, I really want to. But every time I come to do it, I'm so tired, and I know that it's the Yetzer Hara. And it's like, okay. And okay, so I'm in the game. I'm at least in the game, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm talking to him, and I'm saying, I know I can do it. I will. I'm gonna push. I'm gonna try. He's listening. He wants to hear that from you, the same way that we want to see in our kids. How you ever watch a child try to learn how to tie their shoes? And you want to just kind of get in there and do it for them. Hashem wants to get in there and do it for us, but he knows he can't. And we know we can't, because if we keep getting in there and tying their shoes for them, are they ever going to learn to tie their shoes? Never. It's the same kind of concept. So we have these choices we have to make. We have to fully begin to grasp who we are, the power that we hold, the influence that we hold as Jewish women, and why we're here. So I want to get into a little bit about the why we are here, because it's really, really incredible. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Chovos Elavavos by Rabbeinu Bachya Ibn Pekuda. So essentially, Mesilas Yesharim is essentially how to live it's like more the physical life, the Torah and mitzvahs life, the things that we have to do. But he gets into really like the kishkes of it, the heart of it, of like why we do things in the physical world. The Chovos Elavavos is the duties of the mind. It's how to think. It's the mitzvahs we do with our mind, just thinking. Okay? And it's an incredible book. So this particular version of Chovos Elavavos is with commentary by Rav Avigdor Miller. And I wanted to read a little bit from here to just share with you some incredible concepts that it talks about. So it's talking here about the idea that the forces in the world prevent us from achieving our greatness. Right? We've touched on it. It talks about the fact that our physical selves and our spiritual selves are at tension with each other, right? Because the spiritual self wants all the loftiness. It wants that devekus in connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And our physical selves wants food, right? And pleasure and comfort and a nice shower and a nice bed and nice things in the physical world. So our spiritual selves and our physical selves are often at odds with one another. And it's talking about the idea that when we tap into the essence of who we are, that part of ourselves that's connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we have the ability to overcome the physical desire. When we light up that part of ourself, that spiritual part of ourself, we tap into the koach that we need to overcome the physical desire. So it's a perfect example. Why do we fast on Yom Kippur? Why do we fast at all? When we fast, we are allowing the body to rest and the neshama to soar. Every time we eat, we ground ourselves in the physical body. And it kind of pulls the neshama in a little bit more. And we're here. Food grounds us in the physical experience. When we don't eat and we fast, the spiritual levels are able to go higher. So when you see all of these tremendous Rebbeim, and you hear about these Rebbeim that are fasting all the time, or they're eating once a week, or they do these crazy things, and they're at such high, lofty levels spiritually. A lot of the Mekubalim that have, tremendous Ruach HaKodesh, or intuition, and so forth, you see they hardly eat anything. It's because the less that we consume, the higher the levels we can go spiritually. So on days like Yom Kippur and fast days, when we tell the body, no, today you are not in charge. Today the neshama is in charge. And so we deny the body the right and the ability to kind of be, quote unquote, in charge by saying, we're not feeding you. It's not your turn today. It's the neshama's turn today. Okay? So it's talking here about the fact that when we tap into our spiritual self, we have a greater ability to have control over our physical self. So if we're challenged with something, we can know this is a tool. We tap into the neshama, we tap into the koach that we have within us to help subdue the demands in the physical world. Does that make sense?
Is there another way to say it?
The body wants to be in charge, always, because we're in the physical realm, okay? But the neshama, it's more powerful than the body if we allow it to. If we turn our mental focus into the spiritual side of things, to our neshama, and to the koach, and to the source of our neshama, the physical world can't compete with that. Does that make sense? Why is Shabbat so holy? It's the day that the Shekhinah is fully invited to come into this world. Right? The Shekhinah, the very essence of Hashem, can come to be with us in our homes, to sit with us. That's, of course, if we create the environment conducive to welcoming her. Right? Because that day, something that is Kodesh, something that is holy, which your essence is Kodesh, is more powerful than the physical world. Make sense? You can take practice. Okay, so here's the part about Avraham Avinu that I was saying, specifically in regards. In each generation, we see selected individuals who have gone towards the light of wisdom and have turned away from darkness and desire. So meaning gone towards the spiritual realm and turned away from the physical realm. Okay? Such individuals become members of the inner circles of their Creator. So kind of like Hashem's, favorite select, right? Who are called Hashem's people, His beloved. And it says that Chanoch walked with Hashem, Noach walked with Hashem. Our forefather Abraham was one of these select individuals, but he differed in his degree of wisdom relative to the people of his generation. This is why he was called the beloved of his Creator. And the offspring of Avraham Avinu, it says, Hashem says that Abraham's children love me. With this, he reached the highest levels, Avraham did, which is the recognition of his creator, of his oneness, and of Abraham's obligation to be of service to that creator. So what made Avraham Avinu so special from all the people that came before him? He was literally the first person to understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was a one singular creator of all the world, of all the creation, and that because he was the creator, he was meant to be served as such. And Avraham then shifted his entire life to serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and as a result of that merited that all of his descendants, which include us, would also be servants to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? A holy nation of Kohanim, essentially. Holy people serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So at the core of our very essence for being here, it's to be a holy people of service to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And every single one of us has the ability to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our own unique and special way within the context of the Torah that he has created, that he founded the entire matrix that we're a part of within that system. Does that make sense? So as a descendant of Avraham Avinu, we are the chosen people, but what are we chosen for? To serve Hashem. So I laugh, I say, but wait a minute. We got out of Egypt. We were slaves in Egypt, and now we're Bnei Chorin. Now we're free people. But this is really a misnomer. Right? Because what we're understanding is that before we were servants to Paro. We're still servants. Only now we're servants at the highest level. We've been chosen by the Creator of all to serve Him. So no matter what our lives look like, no matter what we do for work and what our families look like and all of our challenges, our number one reason for being here is to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to be able through that service to be the recipient of all the good that He has to offer both in this world and the next. It's a serious business. This is really serious business. You know, it's so funny. People say, oh, but I serve Hashem this way, and I'm okay, and I do this, and I do that. And I make an analogy, because all of us love our cleaning help if we're fortunate enough to have it, right? Imagine you hire a cleaning service to come into your house. They come in the morning, and you say to them, okay, listen, I really need you to focus on the kitchen. The kitchen's an absolute disaster. Focus on the kitchen, deep dive, detail into the kitchen, clean it as best you possibly can. All the rest, it's not so important to me. It's fine, you can do a little bit here, a little bit there, but really focus on the kitchen. I have to go to work. I'll be back in 5 hours. Thank you very much. Call me if you have any questions, okay? You come back after a hard day of work, you're so excited you're going to walk into your now gleaming, meticulous, beautiful kitchen, and you walk in the house and you see literally maybe 2 things have been moved. The kitchen is still completely filthy and you cannot find the cleaning people. And you're looking all around, and where are they? They're in the garage. And your garage is spotless. And you say, why are you in the garage? And they say, well, but look, we did such an incredible job. And you're like, yeah, but why are you in the garage? I asked you to clean the kitchen. And they say, yeah, but look at this amazing job we did in the garage. Your garage is spotless. Everything is completely organized. Look at your shelves. There's nothing out of place. You're like, I didn't ask you to do that. That's not why I'm paying you. That's not why you're here. I use that as an analogy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is like, yeah, you're doing great things, but are you doing what I asked you to do? Are you here on this planet doing what I put you here to do? Have you paid attention to the little hints I've given you about your personal calling? Are you serving me through Torah and mitzvahs? Are you observing my Shabbos? Are you doing what I asked you to do? I gave you however many years here. I gave you an assignment. It's your job to figure it out, to find out who you are, why you're here, and be of service to me. I didn't ask you to clean my garage. I want my kitchen spotless. So I use as an analogy. I always say when I'm kind of going through hard times, I ask myself, okay, am I cleaning the kitchen or am I cleaning the garage? Like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or am I being sidetracked by a million other things? And I might be doing those sidetracked things really, really well, but if it's not what Hashem wants me to be doing, I'm not really accomplishing why I'm here. You see? It's hard. It's hard work. It's hard work to figure out not only our personal mission, because Hashem created every single one of us individually with unique gifts and skills. And by the way, in 120 years, when you go up to Shemayim and you're standing in front of the Beis Din, if you're an amazing artist and you haven't used your gift, they're going to say, I gave you the gift of being an amazing artist. Where's all your art? And you're going to say, oh, but I didn't have time. And they're going to say, well, do you see all of this artwork? And you're going to look, and there are going to be hundreds of pieces of art, gorgeous art. They're going to say, that's all your artwork. You were meant to manifest that in this world. If Hashem gave you the ability to write, and you go up in 120 years in the Beis Din, they're going to say, where are all your books? And you're going to say, well, I didn't have time. I was busy. I had kids. I had work. And they're going to say, there's your books. See those 30 books stacked right there? Bestsellers, each one of them. Those are your books. You were meant to bring those into the world. You didn't use the gift that I gave you. We're going to be shown what we're supposed to be doing if we don't figure it out here and bring it into the world. Every one of you has a special, unique talent, whether that's helping other people, whether that's, I don't know what it is, art, writing, singing, teaching, consulting, I don't know, pick your thing. You all know what you have that's a unique, particular talent to you. That's a key to why you're here. Hashem gave that to you for you to use as a means of being of service to Him. Does that make sense? So part of your homework is to really begin to think about these things that we're talking about. Who you are, like think about it. Drive in the car, instead of being on the phone or turning on the radio, go in silence in the car. To whatever degree that's possible in LA, I'm not sure. But you know, you're in your car, think about it. Think about, who am I? Let it really sit in. Set into you the fact that you are a creation of a HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with literally walking around with His essence in you. All you have to do is start emulating Him, and you immediately create a dveikus with Him, a connection. Think about why you're here. Pashtus, the simplest answer is you are here to serve Him. That's it. You are here to serve Him, each one of us. So the question then becomes, how am I serving Him? How am I serving Him in the way in which He's asking me to serve Him? And how am I serving Him in the way in which is uniquely mine to bring to this world?
Can you repeat it again?
Yes. How am I serving Him in the way in which He is asking me to serve Him? Meaning, the structure of Torah and mitzvahs. Right? Cleaning the kitchen, not the garage. And how am I serving Him in the way that is uniquely mine to serve Him? The gifts and the talents that you personally were given, that you are meant to manifest. Part of our punishment, if you will, in 120 years is the embarrassment when we get to Shemayim. If we haven't figured this stuff out and we haven't begun to manifest those beautiful, amazing gifts that we're meant to bring into the world, and we're shown, you know, and we will know, you know you have a gift for whatever it is, you know, right? By this point, you have an idea when you have a gift that's special and unique and a little bit different than everybody else, you know. And we're shown what we could have done in comparison to what we did. This busha, this embarrassment, is a part of the Gehenna that we feel. That embarrassment piece, it's actually called a part of Gehenna, believe it or not. We have all of this kind of like imaging about Gehenna and what it is, and fire and this, and it is all those things from what we read in the books. But we don't think about the basic stuff. We don't think about the stuff that you know how they say that if you're ever embarrassed in this world, someone embarrasses you and you stay quiet, and then in that moment you can daven for whatever you need? Because the busha, the feeling of shame and embarrassment is so fundamentally against the core of what the human being wants to experience, that in that moment we have an endless koach if we're able to hold ourselves. So that feeling of busha and embarrassment, when we go in Shamayim and they show us all the things we could have done and we did this much instead of this much, it's important for us to understand and know that those things will happen. We need to get busy. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what it is. You have something to bring into this world, bring it. Bring it. Don't have hesitation. Don't be self-conscious. Don't second guess yourself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to bring it. He wants to support you in bringing it. Ask him for help. Daven for it. Daven that he brings the right people into your life to help you manifest whatever you need to manifest. And go forth with confidence. Because after all, you are a daughter of Hashem, and you are royalty, and you are an incredible creation, and you are a Jewish woman, and you have a responsibility. We are leaders. We are leaders. We are a nation of leaders. The Jewish nation does not follow. We lead. That is by design. Spiritually, physically, our genetics, our makeup, we are leaders. Each and every one of us. I happen to be the one up here standing tonight. I guarantee you half of you could do it too. Maybe more than half, maybe all of you. You know? So, homework, journaling, thinking, reflecting. Let this stuff simmer with you. You know, stuff that you're struggling with. It's okay. Struggle with it. You know? I'm at the point in my life and I don't fight it anymore. I understand that I'm not in control of anything. Nothing. Hashem runs the world. Hashem runs my life. Hashem runs my body. If I know that if I take a medicine, I don't know if any of you have known me, how long you've known me, I lost a lot of weight. You know how many years I tried to lose weight? Years! Could not lose weight. Could not lose weight. I hit a certain age, certain number of babies, whatever it was, no matter what I tried, couldn't lose weight. Hashem connected me with a doctor. The doctor gave me a certain medicine. Slowly but surely it helped me to lose weight. But it wasn't the medicine that helped me lose weight. Hashem helped me lose weight. He allowed the doctor to give me the medicine, and he allowed the medicine to work in my body. That's it. And if he continues to allow me to be thin and trim, I'll be thin and trim. And if he doesn't, I'll gain weight again. Because I understand I have choices to make. I do the best I can. But in the end, he is in charge. And if you haven't yet gotten to that point of subservience and realization, at some point you will. At some point you will. It might be in the last moments in 120 years where you have your epiphany of, wow, Hashem really is in charge. No matter how much I want to stay here anymore, it's my time to go. Right? Or whether it's tomorrow and you wake up and you go, wow, Hashem really is in control. You know? We do our hishtadlus, we do our best, but in the end, we are his servants. We're here. We're here for him. He's here for us. It's his creation, and it's our job to make it as best as possible, to make ourselves as best as possible, to make his creation as best as possible, to be of service to him so that his Shekhinah can dwell here with us, and eventually he can bring Mashiach. That's it. Everything else that we see in the world around us, all the stuff we get caught up in, it's important because it's a part of our lives. We can't say it's not important. But in the scope of why we're here, we get caught up in a lot of thinking that things are more important than they are. And that distracts us from being able to do the real work of why we're here. Make sense? So this was super heavy and super intense and a super lot of information. And I hope I didn't like lose you all or scare you away. I promise you the next time it's going to be not as heavy. But I needed to lay this foundation with you so that you understand that everything else we cover moving forward, it's all going to be tools and stuff to take now this foundational understanding of who you are and really be able to run with it. You know, so that as we make our way towards Rosh Hashanah, I am training Navy SEALs. People are like, what are you doing? I'm training Navy SEALs. I want the Navy SEALs of the Jewish women of the nation. Like, that is my mission. I don't need everybody. I just need a few good women. Like the Army. Okay? Like, who really get it. Because if I get a few of you who really, really get it, and you start to take this stuff to heart, and you start to grow and run with it, I don't need everybody else, because you're going to be out there just being you, and by your very essence, you're going to influence everyone around you, and it's going to ripple out and out and out and out and out. You see how it goes? So the more you stand in your own power as a daughter of Hashem and understand your holiness and understand your value and your worth and why you're here, the more you're going to immediately impact everyone else around you. Make sense? Okay, so we'll open it up to a couple questions. Yes?
Okay, so in the earlier portion of the class, you mentioned that working on ourselves, and let's say, for example, you mentioned when someone gets angry, and then in that moment you have to stop. I don't know if this was the scope of the class, but if you can give a practical example of how to do that, because sometimes I do catch myself, like, with whatever I'm going through. Like, let's say I'll get upset with something, and then I'll catch myself, and I'm like, no, Laura, you shouldn't do that. Like, remember, you're not in control. But then I think, like, oh, it's too late. I already said this. I'm gonna look so funny. Like, what I'm gonna say? Okay, thank you. Like, and then I just do this whole spiral. No, you can change in any moment. Every moment's created like new. And then I'm like, no, but it's gonna be weird. Like, I just go into this whole spiral. So do you have like practical examples of how to just stop in that moment?
Okay, so it's like a muscle. So just to recap the question. When you're working on a midah, in this particular case she's talking about anger, which, by the way, there's a phenomenal book called, I have it at home. BzH Hashem, I'm going to remember. It's called Anger. Anger is the greatest teacher, or Anger, what is it? I'll find out. It's the most unbelievable book on anger specifically. But it's like a muscle. Anytime you're working on improving a midah of any kind, you have to flex the muscle. You have to practice. So it's the kind of thing where you get angry, you don't catch yourself at all until an hour after, right? Then you get angry, you catch yourself 5 minutes after. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you so much. Be well. Hopefully we'll see you next week. BzH Hashem. Yes, please come. Bring friends. Fill them in so I don't have to reteach that whole thing. And then you get angry, and then 5 minutes after you've started getting angry, you're still angry, you catch yourself. Then the next time you get angry, and 1 minute after you start, you catch yourself. And then you're about to get angry, and you catch yourself. It's like a process. You know, it's very rare that a person just makes a decision, okay, I'm not going to get angry anymore, and then they don't get angry anymore.
But what do you do when you catch yourself?
So the only thing that will stand in your way is your ego.
Yeah.
That's it. So if you're willing to sacrifice your ego, and you're willing to slaughter it in any given moment, it becomes much easier to work on your midah. Because what stops you from apologizing? What stops you from, in the middle of getting angry, being like, you know what, I am being a total idiot. I'm sorry, let me step back and start over. The only thing that stops you from doing that is your ego. Because you don't want to feel embarrassed or shamed or less than or whatever. The merits you get in Shemayim for doing stuff like that, for literally just shechting your ego, is unbelievably tremendous. It's literally like puts off nuclear bombs in Shemayim. Like the Satan is going, oh my God, what's happening? What is she doing right now? Why do I feel weak in the knees? You know, because when somebody takes the reins to that degree, it's like it shatters stuff in Shemayim in a good way. You know, and then it gets easier from there, because if you understand that really the only thing that keeps you is embarrassment, really, what else is there keeping you from saying you're doing something wrong?
Well, like they might bring it up again.
They might.
Like, remember?
They might. And then you know what you say? Thank you for reminding me. Thank you for reminding me. Because that's another slap to your ego. And the more that you can slap your ego in this world, the less they're going to slap you around in 120 years when you go to the next world. Mm-hmm.
You might have covered this in the beginning, so if you didn't.
No, that's okay.
Okay, so the premise for everything you just shared, is it listed with sources about Schar V'Onesh in the next world? Like where, because in Shema, it's written black on white, follow what I say, I will bring you rain and your fields will flourish. Follow what I say, my wrath will be upon you. It's a very simple formula and we have it black on white. This, when you get to the next world, your ego will be slapped around. How do we know about all this stuff?
It's a very, very good question. So it's written pretty much in all the texts. Number one, we don't study Gemara, right? Generally speaking, women don't study Gemara. My husband happens to be Talmid Chacham, and I have my ear against the wall of everything he's learning, so I'm overhearing a lot of stuff. You'll find a lot of information in books like this, Chovos Alavavos, Mesilas Yesharim. There's a lot of stuff in the prophecies, the books of prophecies, that talk about what happens, before and after. If you really want to read about it, you can read Rav Avigdor Miller's book Olam Haba, where it's a thick book. It's not for beginners necessarily. It's like pretty intense, but it talks all about this world and the next. There are a lot of more Kabbalistic type books that are talking in detail about what happens in the afterlife after you pass, what happens to the neshama, where the neshama.
The Zohar or
the Zohar and other.
Saying other than the Zohar or.
Yeah. There are a lot of Mekubalim that have written their own texts, that have written their own books, that have accountings of it. Men, like for example, that had Ruach HaKodesh, and they were writing things, with kind of downloads. You have really. I've got a whole list of books at home. If you want, I can write them down. I can have my husband write them down. The ones we have at home are in Hebrew. I don't know if they've been translated into English. I'll tell you what, this book is an amazing place to start in terms of talking about the neshama, what happens, the creation, talking about prophecy, talking about. It's called Inner Space by Rav Aryeh Kaplan. This is really based mostly in Kabbalah, but it's written in very simple language. It's very super easy to understand. But let me do a little bit more research for you on, if you want to look specifically about that kind of stuff, I'll get for you. Okay, no problem. Yeah, hold on. Let me just make myself a note because I don't want to forget. Okay. What? Tomer Devorah is an amazing way. I don't know that it talks specifically about the things that she's talking about. Tomer Devorah is phenomenal. Tomer Devorah, you should read it every day. It's divided up like Tehillim. You know how Tehillim, you could do a seder of Tehillim, like either daily or weekly or whatever. Tomer Devorah is the same thing. Tomer Devorah teaches you exactly how to emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Exactly. How he is with his rachamim, with his grace, how he behaves with us, and therefore how we can behave with others. And it talks about that whole element of emulation as a means towards Devekus Hashem and feeling connected with the Kadosh Baruch Hu.
So, thank you for speaking. Thank you for coming. This was very, very deep. Thank you. One of the questions I had that does have to do with women is, you mentioned in the beginning, how do we bind ourselves to Hashem by imitating his attributes? And for women, I feel it's just so different how to even do that. Because yes, we are spiritual, we have Bina Yetira, we're not required to go to a minyan, etc. But women are also sensitive and emotional, where at times they really don't know who they are. Examples are menstruation, postpartum. So if they don't know who they are, and the first question is, the main mistake for women is they don't know who they are. At that period, how are they're not at fault especially, how are they supposed to connect to Hashem? And especially if it's gonna, like you said, impact the children, the husband, if the women don't know who they are. So it's just something I feel like women deal with the most
Yes.
than the men, and it brings it up in Tanakh a lot, that women, for example, Korach just passed, but the whole thing that led to the whole revolution of the 250 men was because Korach's wife was media of jealousy that she didn't work on. Like, who are you? Like, why are you making such a big deal? That led to this whole revolution. So, as women, how can we imitate Hashem when at times we are lost?
So it's, first of all, it's okay to be lost, because we're not really lost. We just feel lost, right? And it's in those times that we feel, let's say, whether it's disconnected or going through a hard time or whatever, that it's written that that's the time that Hashem is actually closest to you. You know, it's that whole idea that you know, in those moments He's carrying you. You're not actually walking. He's the one holding you up, right? So sometimes in those moments we have to use our intellect to kind of override all that emotional turbulence that we experience, to know that even though we may not be feeling it, that Hashem is in fact with us, and He's hearing us, and He sees us, and He's rooting for us. And there's also an element of it to trust that sometimes when we're lost, it's because we have to find something. Right? If we don't feel lost or disconnected, then we're not looking. If we're completely content and complacent, then we basically stay stagnant. Which is why, as we discussed, we have to have challenge. We have to have times where we feel a disconnect or some kind of like interruption. You know, and for us naturally, those are with our cycle, with birth, with, you know, menopause, all these different stages that the woman goes through based on her physical development, obviously impacts all the rest of it and emotional. But you can guarantee that you're not the first and you won't be the last. And every woman in the history of the Tanakh that they talk about, I can't think of one single woman who had an easy life, literally, and maybe I'm wrong. Off the top of my head, I can't think of one who had like an easy time. The Imaot certainly did not. The Neviot certainly did not. Is there anybody you could think of that had an easy time? I don't frankly know any woman living today that has an easy time. Like, I don't think that's our job. I don't think our job is to have necessarily an easy time. And I think that part of our strength comes from the fact that we do have to overcome so much challenge. You know, even just on a basic physical level, we have to overcome so much challenge. I always joke, anybody ever watch Rav Meir Eliyahu? I call him the M16. You ever watch him? He's Israeli. He's super intense, super deep in his Torah. I literally, he's one of those Rebbeim that the first times that I heard him, I didn't understand anything he was saying, because he speaks in Hebrew, and he's so fast. And I asked Hashem, please open my mind. Like, what? Look, I want to learn, I want to study, I want to understand. I know he's saying good stuff. I want to know what he's saying, you know. Slowly but surely, Hashem helped me to kind of like open up a little bit and begin to really understand him. Now I can follow everything that he says. But I call him the M16 because he's literally like, I'm not kidding, for like an hour. He doesn't stop. In Hebrew. In Hebrew. Like, and deep stuff, like really deep stuff. Like I have to stop it and go back and listen again. And why did I say that? Was because, he makes a joke that he says something. He says, Isha she, chas v'chalila, but Isha sheyoledet v'koveret ze kmo lilmod Torah levelishkoach. A woman who, God forbid, chas v'shalom, gives birth and loses the baby, it's as if it's the same as if you study Torah and you forget what you learn. Okay, that's what he says. Meaning, if you study Torah and you forget what you learn, you didn't study Torah. That's kind of like his thing. So I was thinking about that because I forget everything. I mean, I know when I learn, if I've learned it, I learned it. but it's very hard for me to remember sources. Like, I wish I could give you right now off the top of my head 5 sources. I know them, but like I can't pull them from my brain and be like, oh, da 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 da. But I'll get them, but I know what I've read. I know I've read it. So I was thinking about this. It's like, why is this not sitting right with me? And then I realized, I said, so this applies to men only, because any postmenopausal woman knows that there's no way you're going to remember everything that you've ever read. Like if I ever meet, I'm going to tell them I take issue with this one sentence that you said. It's not fair, because women can't be held to the same standard of learning as men, just because of our physicality and everything that we go through. So I think that in those times when we're going through those challenges, we have to understand that that's really the norm. It's not the exception. And we have to understand that most likely everyone has gone through it, will go through it, is going through it, and to take some comfort in that, and seek assistance and support where you need it. Really, yeah.
Thank you. One of the things that I just thought about as we were talking about our emo and have easy lives, they weren't, and maybe I'm wrong, but they aren't really. Their story isn't relayed to us as the ima'ot without the aba'ot.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're never saying that their life was easy, or they only had a problem with, their in-law, or they only had a problem with not having a child until they were 9 years. And I think that a lot of us in LA, until we hit the milestone where we have someone who is our husband,
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of in this place where we can't achieve our full potential as an ima'ot, or as an imam, or as a leader in our family life, and often the attempted dates that we might meet, this person may not be the one that your great-great-great-grandchild can look up to. So when we're kind of, like, if we're talking ourselves down from a really difficult situation because Sarah Mainu or someone else went through something similar, Sarah had Abraham.
They were a team.
We can only pray that our husbands and our future husbands are even, can even, not just named Abraham, but
right.
That they have the kind of behavior. So I think that adds a lot of, like, a very big hurdle for us who are trying to be as holy or as good. Yeah. And we're kind of stuck, and no matter, like, of course God has a plan and it'll everything at the right time, but we had a class once where you talked about how all the souls, they have to come down, and the longer we wait without an opportunity to have children, or without an opportunity to be married and have children, those souls that are, it's like kind of a bottleneck up there.
Right.
And so I thought of that when you said how the mothers had all these problems, but they wouldn't be who they were without their husbands. And similarly, Abraham may not have been Abraham as much as
without Sarah.
Without Sarah, and so it's kind of like a gray, stagnant time where we can work on our anger and we can work on all the things, and maybe the grace that we show, 5 more people by the 6th person will merit to meet our Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not quite so.
It's not. It's not. Listen, I think that you can only keep your eyes on the prize, right? Be very clear about your vision, your mission, your service, your goals, what you want, and continue to just work in that direction. And that can only produce good. Do you know what I'm saying? That can only produce good results. And they say that the more you work on yourself and improve yourself, the higher level of a person you bring to you. Because essentially you kind of attract you at the same vibration, of where you're holding. So if you continue to grow and move in a forward direction, so then whenever that intersection happens between you and that person you're supposed to be with, it's going to be in that higher place, theoretically. You know, because if you're going up, then you're going to meet somebody on the upward trajectory. You know, and that's the ideal, because ultimately you want to grow together. You know, you want to like kind of continue going in that direction. You know, a lot of people are married 40, 50, 60 years. They're like the same people on the 60th anniversary that they were on the first anniversary. That's not the goal. They're not winning the game. Just staying married is I mean, it's an accomplishment in today's world, but if you haven't grown together, you know, as people, qualities, you know, so you've the time has passed and you've accomplished the fact that you've stayed together, but what are we meant to do together? You know, we're meant to produce goodness, like exactly the way Hashem produces goodness, whatever that looks like, you know, as a couple. So it will happen. B'ezras Hashem. Any other questions? Yes.
So when you're talking about the 20% that didn't leave Egypt.
That did.
I mean, that did leave Egypt, but 80% didn't. I heard that, you know, it might not mean that. There's many different interpretations.
There are.
Of the word chamushim.
Yes.
I mean, they left Egypt, you know, it could be with weapons, it could be, and I heard, and I don't remember it, but I heard a shir by Heavy Garfinkel. I think it's on TorahAnytime.com. It was called something like the 20%.
Okay.
She goes through a ton of sources.
Oh, amazing.
Makes sense of it. And I think she takes away that scary part that, you know, it might not have been exactly that way.
Yeah.
It really might not have been.
And yeah, it might not have been. It also might have been. We don't know. We don't know.
It's worth hearing for sure.
Yeah, I would love to hear it.
I'd love to hear it again, but I don't know.
Yeah. You said it's called. That's what it's called. 20%.
Like
Torah Anytime.
TorahAnytime.com.
Yeah.
Heavy Garfinkel. She's one of the speakers. What's his name? Heavy Garfinkel. And I think it's called the 20%.
I'm gonna look it up.
Something about, you know, something similar to that. I wish I knew the exact title.
Yeah. Amazing.
Maybe you can find it under her list.
Okay, I'm gonna look. Thank you for telling me. Yeah. I mean, listen, there's no way to know for sure. And there are a lot of different interpretations over time, but the Nevi'im are the what's in the Tanakh is considered the absolute authority on that kind of thing. Anything that's kind of filtered down from there, and I'll see what sources that she brings. I'm super curious. And you know, I was talking to my husband's cousin was in town visiting from Israel, and he said, we were talking about Mashiach, and he said something like, I don't believe in a Mashiach and like that Mashiach is going to come, that it's going to be, that kind of like, that there'll be like, all of this destruction and that, and it'll be more like, he was kind of like saying, I don't want it to come like that. I don't want to hear that I'm not going to be able to be with my non-observant relatives and my friends that are like this and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, nobody wants that. Like, nobody wants that at all. But here's the hard part. It's not up to us. None of this is up to us, and we don't have any idea really in the end how it's going to play out. So I said to him, so he said, okay, so what do you propose, And I said, I propose that we do the best that we can, because really that's all we can do. I propose that we try to understand what Hashem wants from us and go down that path full force and do the best that we can and bring as many people along with us with as much love as possible. And like I have a whole part of my family that's not observant, and I'm very, very close with them, and I love them very, very much, and I don't ever bother them about anything. I respect them fully. Like, that's whatever's their choice is their choice, And I said, so we just can only try to be the best people that we can possibly be, And there's really nothing more we can do. We cannot force anybody into anything, nor do we want to force anybody into anything. There's no coercion in spirituality. You cannot coerce someone into like believing in God or observing anything, you know. We just have to try to be the best that we can, as loving as we can, as accepting as we can of ourselves, of everyone else around us, and try to live in such a way that people want to be around us. You know, they feel good around us, and they want to be, you know, in that energy. You know, when people come into my house for Shabbos, I want them to feel like they're being hugged. You know, like that's what I aim for when I have guests on Shabbos or family on Shabbos. You know, I want them to feel like they can like relax and enjoy. You know, and I hope it's.
Observant? Even if they are not observant?
Even if they're not observant? Well, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for everybody. When my family comes to my house, even if they're not observant, they would never do anything to like disrespect my home. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not going to go on their phone in the middle of Shabbat in the living room. I don't know what they do in the bathroom. It's not my business. But you know what I'm saying? Like if someone were to openly violate Shabbat in my house, in public areas of my house, I would politely ask them not to do it, even if they're my family. You know, I wouldn't walk into my relative's house that are non-smokers, and I'm also not a smoker. I'm just using it as an example, but you know, and like light up a cigarette if they have a non-smoking house. Just because I would never disrespect somebody like that. You know, so there's a difference between trying to force someone to be observant versus just having just a general basic respect. You know. Any other questions? No?
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Bezrat Hashem, hopefully we'll see you next week.
Yes.